Yeah.
Scott.
All right, I just switched over. Yep, the Zoom thing works. The Google Meets one doesn't. But I think we should probably get going, Michael.
I think you're probably right. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, guys. We're a small group. Most of us know each other at this point, but for those that don't, I'll go ahead and make a couple introductions. First off, my name is Michael Cravens. I'm the advocacy coordinator for the Arizona Wildlife Federation. We've also got Scott Garland with us. He's our executive director. We've got Nikki Julian. She is our outreach coordinator, and we're the ones kind of running the show here. We are also fortunate to have with us Nate Reese. Nate Reese is the Arizona Sportsman's Conservation Coordinator for Trout Unlimited. And Nate's going to talk to us a bit about local issues here with climate change on our fisheries. And most importantly, we have Alec Underwood. Alec is with the Montana Wildlife Federation, and he is the executive producer of the film we're going to watch. So what we'll do is, beyond this, we will we'll view our film. Then we're gonna go back and catch up with Alec and Nate again. They're gonna tell us a little bit. Alec will tell us a little bit about the film and climate change, of course. Then we'll go to Nate. Nate will bring it back, make it a little more local here for Arizona. Then after that, let me check my notes here. We will move on to just a regular Q&A and discussion. And of course, with a group like this, it'll be pretty low key. So, speak up anytime you like. Further, when we go to view the film here in just a moment, I'm going to share it from my screen. Nikki is also going to provide a link in the comments. So therefore, if you have any issues with quality or anything like that, you can go watch it directly on that link. Should come through nice and clear and sharp there. As soon as that's over, we'll reconnect back here and yeah, talk to Alec and Nate.
I already did that.
Yeah, but Michael's video is still going.
Yeah, my face was apparently distracting to Scott, so he texted me.
No, that wasn't it. I was just trying to get the quality of the audio and video better. I wasn't that. Anyway.
Well, I apologize that was choppy. I don't know if Nikki has yet, but she can share a link. And hi, Val.
Somebody made me show my face, but I had to go get my beverage to join you guys.
I'm glad you're here. That's an all-day IPA. You can just keep drinking that all night.
That's the point.
Anyway, Nikki can share a link. If that was low quality for you, please go back, watch it again. So obviously we're a small group here, there's no point in being formal about all this. Let's quickly go through and just the folks we haven't heard from. Please introduce yourselves. So Val, can you tell us who you are?
Val, I'm happy to see John Nelson and on at least his name, knowing that he's part of this. That's great.
Yep. All right, John, if you can hear us and we can hear you, please introduce yourself.
Well, let's start out. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely. Loud and clear.
Amazing. Yep. Thank you so very much. Yeah, I moved up here quite some time ago. I live in southwestern Colorado, and you talk about climate change. The year I moved up here, it rained all but 3 days in May. Mm-hmm. And we haven't had enough water right now probably to fill a teacup in the last 4 months. So you talk about climate change, we're seeing it.
Yeah.
John, we'd love to know, both Scott and I'd love to know where in southwest Colorado you're talking about.
I live about 20 miles south of Montrose.
Oh, sure.
About,
I'm a Delta and Austin, Colorado girl.
Ah, then you know the area very well.
Yeah.
No, we have a river and 2 ponds where I fly fish, and it's all of what 17 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
But the real problem is the dryness right here, and we can talk about probability when it comes to climate change, but all I know is we're warming up like Phoenix and we're drying out, and that's very, very frightening. So I'm just glad the organization's still going so well. basically run a lot of different nonprofits around here at different times. And particularly with the virus and everybody staying home and that sort of thing, why it's a different world. So
Well,
I sure
John, this is Scott Garlett. I look forward to meeting you sometime. I've got a cabin on the West Fork of the Dolores River, so maybe it'll be sometime up in those neck of the woods.
Well, anytime any of you are up here, give me a call. You're more than welcome.
And John, I've got a farm on the Denison. So talk about that rainfall amount, and this runoff amount's very frightening for us, and having our water rights off of the mesa.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, look forward to meeting all of you.
All right, well, we got one more phone number here. Is that one of you guys?
It might be, is it 236-2479? Yeah, it's probably me.
All right. So this is going to get real informal because we're kind of all part of this, except for John. I think everyone would still love to hear from Alec. Tell us a bit about the film, how it came to be, how you made it, thought process behind it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate all of you being here. I know it's a small group and we had some technical difficulties there. I think that's the reality of the COVID-19 pandemic, is that we all have to be tech experts now, and we have to figure out how to do these Zoom calls, and not my strong suit for sure. So thanks for trying to figure it out. The film, basically, to back up a little bit, I've been involved in conservation advocacy in one form or another the last 8 years, and with a bunch of different organizations. I'm heavily involved with Trout Unlimited as a conservation chair of our local chapter up here, also representing that chapter on the state council, Montana Trout Unlimited, who was part of the film, and then also on the National Leadership Council's climate advocacy work group. And so TU definitely, in addition to my work with Montana Wildlife Federation and National Wildlife Federation, so pretty relevant, the group that's on the call here today. And Scott, I love your hat, by the way.
I was going to show that off to you. I didn't know that you'd be able to pick up on it.
Oh, thank you for representing.
I'm gonna auction this off at the end of the call for Montana. It's a Montana Wildlife Federation hat for those who can't.
Oh yeah, I'm going to interrupt as well. And I noted the Bone Broadhead's hat in the film, and that is that Jared Babensack? He was the chair of Arizona Backcountry Hunters and Anglers before he moved to New Mexico. That's his company.
Oh, interesting.
And not one you see very often, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, just having worked on the issue of climate change for MWF in the last 3 years, or 3+ years, I've learned quite a bit. I started with our organization running a climate change campaign, and really the emphasis I've always taken is finding the people who are most passionate about the issue and trying to amplify their voices. Being in the film myself was certainly cringeworthy, but we had to figure out a way to take ownership of the film. Although I hate seeing myself in the film,
you did a great job, and that last fish was nice.
Thank you. That was actually a bull trout, which I thought a lot about the legality. Up here, bull trout, as some of you know, you cannot angle for them in most Montana rivers. And that I was actually streamer fishing with a tiny JJ Special, for those of you who streamer fish, and that bull trout just ate it. But I thought about leaving that out of the film, but I released it quickly and legally. So sorry to get on the tangent there. But yeah, basically my goal with this film was to show the authenticity of these people who care a lot about the resource. And that tactic has worked well for me, talking within the sporting community about climate advocacy. It's worked time and again to find these folks who are very authentic, who have spent a lot of time on those Montana rivers. And so you can see that in the film. And, you know, would also like to give a shout out, not that he's going to see this Zoom meeting, but our filmmaker, Matt, you know, really getting that camera up and personal with these folks and catching them in some of their most vulnerable states. I mean, you can see every person in that film truly, you know, cares about the issue when they're talking about it, you know, nearly bringing some of them to tears. And including myself, I think climate change should be the top #1 priority for the hunting and angling community in the long term, because it really will have the greatest impact to not only the species that we like to hunt or fish, but all sorts of other species and their habitat. So, you know, in addition to finding those authentic voices, just being really upfront. I mean, you can tell we jumped right in that film and we didn't sugarcoat it. The trailer actually, ironically, doesn't mention climate change. And I don't know if we did that on purpose or not, but we jump right into the issue and aren't afraid to talk about it. And for some organizations, they're not in the same place, but at least for MWF, you know, we've been on record for quite a while about advocating for action on climate change. We've just never really had our programs and our campaigns on climate change, I guess, dialed enough to, you know, have a strategic campaign. And so that's what I'm working on right now. The goal of this film is to take these folks who are authentic and use their voices to identify other folks who feel the same way. And I think from an engagement standpoint and moving people up the engagement ladder to become great spokespeople on this issue, you got to start somewhere. And so this is going to identify some of those people, and then we take it step by step. And with the ultimate goal to have a widespread effort within the angling community and the industry, all of these outdoor retailers and businesses and major fly fishing companies having collective action eventually on this issue. And you know, I see the angling community and that industry as a really important group that is uniquely positioned to influence our elected officials on taking those necessary steps that we need for large-scale legislation. I'll probably stop there because I just rambled a bunch, but you know, I'd love to, you know, hear other people's thoughts or thoughts on the film, or however we want to go with this.
Thank you. I'm
And
going
I can jump in, Michael.
Please do. That was my next step.
Sure. This is Nathan Reese with Trout Unlimited. I'm the Arizona coordinator here in Arizona. Yeah, Alec, a lot of the changes that's happening in Montana, we're seeing the same thing in Arizona. Hunters and anglers are really, you know, we're the boots on the ground and the first people to observe these changes happening in the landscape. And just like Montana, we have less snowpack. Streams are becoming intermittent, which is, you know, leading to disconnected habitat. I mean, for a perfect example, I'm going to be on a project with Game and Fish next week where some native Gila trout are too low in a stream that the Game and Fish Department is worried is going to go dry in a few weeks, and we're going to have to relocate those fish further upstream. You know, the section of the stream that the fish currently occupy has never been this low before, and you know, that's why they're really worried it's going to go dry and kind of decimate this population in Grapevine Creek. You know, we're having longer, more intense wildfires. Of course, this is because of our warming climate, and that coupled with the mismanagement of our forests over the past 100 years with overgrazing and logging practices has really led to this perfect storm of really intense wildfires that our season is much longer than it used to be. ADEQ, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, they report that 90% of Arizona is in a severe drought state, and 50% of that is classified as an extreme drought. So we're right there with you guys. We're on the front line as well, and it's a scary thing that's happening. So the Arizona Wildlife Federation and TU here in Arizona, we've been tackling this issue and really working with our legislators to try to come to this piece of bipartisan legislation. And it's a bummer that this issue has been labeled bipartisan. I like that part in your film, how it shouldn't be. Essentially, this is something that it affects everyone, or it will affect everyone down the line. So it's something that we're jumping on and we're taking very seriously here in Arizona. And as you know, TU National is taking very seriously being on that Climate Action Committee. So just thank you for the film, and thanks for coming on and sharing that with us today.
Thank you, Nathan. And it's really good to hear that Arizona Wildlife Federation and Arizona TU are committed to the issue.
Yeah. Big time.
With that, I'd like to add one more, I think, very tangible example of how serious of an issue this is in the Southwest. As you know, Gila trout only inhabits the range between Arizona and New Mexico. In 2017, we lost 75% of all of our Gila trout due to wildfires. That's not too far away from 100%. I mean, it's a serious issue, that we could completely lose species. The Apache trout only occurs on the drainages that come off of Mount Baldy and the White Mountains. That's not a large range. Serious stuff, and it's got tangible, real world impacts, on the ground in our lifetimes right now. So, all right. With that, again, I keep repeating this. I'm going to do it one more time. We're a small group, so I'm kind of going off script here. We do have a couple take action elements that we would like you guys to do. I was going to interject them separately, but there's just a few of us. Nikki can share links in our comments. You can go to the LastCast webpage. You can sign on to their petition. And also we would encourage you to go to our action page. Again, Nikki can share that. And you can send our letter directly on Climate Action for Wildlife, or you can alter that and make it your own and send it. So 2 things you can do there. Further, let's see. I guess at this point, it would be safe to just say we can talk amongst ourselves, ask any questions you got. I'm sure Nate or Alec, myself, any of us can jump in and answer these questions. So if you got any, please spit them out. I will get the ball rolling with 2 of them. One would be, in this particular case, how do we do this better? How do we get more people involved? Secondly, and this one's actually coming from Scott, how do we talk about climate to sportsmen? It can be difficult, but we're certainly open to ideas. So if anybody's got any opinions on those things, I'd certainly love to hear them.
I think the sad part about most people that enjoy the outdoors is they tend to do it quietly and on their own. I've seen a number of hunting organizations up here come and go, and it's not because they've stopped hunting. It's just they don't really want to get involved. They want to be able to go hunt a deer or elk or whatever, and that can be fatal in the long run. I mean, I was on a board of Operation Game Thief for a number of years, and get people to open up and participate. It's always a difficult decision. It's always a difficult task. You see it in nonprofits all the time, but it certainly is critical.
Yeah, I think that's it's always a challenge, like you say, John. I think it's particularly difficult on issues like climate when they are sometimes perceived as being partisan issues. And so I guess I'd like to ask Alex, since you guys have some history with working on climate, and Montana Wildlife Federation has been, like you say, kind of been clear about your position on climate change for a while, but recognizing that a lot of sportsmen tend to be more conservative. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how you open the conversation with sportsmen about climate. I mean, this video does a fantastic job of it, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to share it broadly, and we'll continue to do that because I think it really does pose the question in a very direct way. But if you could just tell us a little bit more about the journey of Montana Wildlife Federation and engaging sportsmen in the conversation on climate, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. I mean, it's a really good question. Like, how do you navigate having that discussion with groups, especially, you know, our affiliates for MWF are typically small rod and gun clubs around the state. You know, many of them, you know, do lean to the right on many issues. I think we've been kind of lucky to talk about and focus on impacts and really talk about how climate change is changing recreation, how it's changing opportunity. So when we look at, you know, our rivers up here, our numerous blue ribbon trout streams, we've got examples almost every year now where we have sections of our rivers shutting down during parts of the day, the hoot owl restrictions, closing them in the afternoons where our state wildlife management agency forces closures on them. And, you know, talking about how that restricts people on the river and also amplifies crowding issues, all of which we're seeing more and more as time goes on and our rivers are, you know, becoming increasingly popular.
Hey, Nate.
Yeah.
I was intrigued by the fact that at the end of the video you were in a sense kind of named the boogeyman of big oil. And it's intriguing to me because it gives kind of somebody else to blame or something. And, you know, in our messaging here, I thought that was intriguing that you did sort of point that, hey, these guys are driving one agenda that's not in your best interest. So I'm curious how that has played out.
Yeah, and really, since I mean, we did release the film on Wednesday, so I don't know. I don't know if we've had too much time to know if we're going to have significant pushback on that messaging. And really, you're right. I mean, that little paragraph that we had in there points toward our reliance on fossil fuels for energy production. And I ran that paragraph by lots of different higher ups, including my boss, Dave Chadwick, at the time. But really, it is true that our history of reliance on fossil fuels, it's a history of subsidizing that type of energy. And that I'm sure some of you saw the article that just came out about renewables have now are providing more energy than coal for the first time in 130 years. And so I think things are changing, and I think it's easier now to message on the fact that more and more we need to be promoting ways that we can incentivize increasing our renewable energy portfolio. And yeah, I mean, we took kind of a harder line on that messaging, but it is true that big oil and fossil fuel interests have made this a partisan issue.
Well, I think it would work, and I don't know how well it works in Montana, but in Arizona, I think when you compare what is the sporting industry economy versus the oil and gas economy, and I think that alone gives us some teeth.
Well, yeah, and I do wonder what your numbers are down there. You know, up here, outdoor recreation in general, $7.1 billion and 71,000 jobs. Out of that $7 billion, about a little over $1 billion of that, and it's probably more now because that's a 2018 figure, is fishing. so almost a seventh of it is fishing, and hunting being a big part of it too. But that is our top economic industry in the state of Montana besides agriculture. And so it does really dwarf the amount of, and given in Montana, we have a lot of low potential energy development. And so when you look at our landscape, you know, it's not like North and South Dakota and other and Wyoming areas where there's rich potential. But again, we didn't sugarcoat it, and that messaging for those who are tied to those industries, including people who have jobs in those industries, it's harder to use that in those communities. And we probably wouldn't directly use that if we were giving presentations or talking about that. So I think, like I said, our program is limited by my capacity, since I'm pretty much the only one who works on our program. if I had an army of climate staffers, I think I could do a lot more damage.
Well, you guys certainly did a great job with the film.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any more questions for Nate or Alec?
I have one, Alec. I'm very impressed that you're an army of one, because I'm an army of one, I guess, in 0.5 with Michael and another 0.5 with Scott. So I'm lagging behind what you're able to accomplish. So thank you. You're an inspiration. How did you get the film to kind of come about? If you have this, were you the one with the idea? Were they the one with the idea? How did you find a filmmaker?
That's a great question. The film that we produced was actually made possible by a media grant through Patagonia, and that was our source of funding there, as well as Montana Trout Unlimited helping out. I guess with how it came about, I mean, I've had the idea for a long time, and I just never had the means. And so after I wrote that grant and received it, it was real. So that was nice. But, you know, our filmmaker here locally, Matt Devlin, he is an angler himself. He's a guide himself. And so I felt as though he would be able to best tell the story of these other guides and really capture the scenes that we needed to not only give them an authentic voice, but to make it seem like we, you know, we know what we're doing as anglers, to make it seem authentic. And, you know, there's other groups out there who make climate films and they try and use the sporting community, but it comes off as in my opinion, non-authentic, or because they try and do too much with it. And so us both being anglers and knowing the shots we needed to get and how we were going to portray these people, I mean, it really, I think it worked great. And again, the whole goal there was to just find some of the most passionate people. And, you know, I'm proud to say that the 4 or 5 folks in that film are truly close friends of mine. And that's why I chose them, because I knew they would be committed. And so if you're going to make a film like this ever, it's important to find those people who are going to be the best spokespeople possible on the issue, even if they're not well spoken. Like Brian in the film, to be honest, we probably did 2 hours of interview with that guy, and he was so nervous that the first hour we used none of that footage. So a lot of headaches, but if the people are passionate about it and committed to it, then it'll show through the film, in my opinion.
Yeah, that really came through, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Do folks have questions on you know, other tactics, or I guess are there plans with Arizona Wildlife Federation or Arizona TU for ideas such as this, or anything like that?
I'd like to maybe open up the discussion about, this is Nate with TU in Arizona, about some type of legislation that everyone can get behind. I know TU National has endorsed HR 763, which is the Carbon Dividend Tax Act, but you know, that has its holes just like everything else. And we've been trying to create these partnerships with Arizona legislators on introducing climate change related legislation, and they'll do something like a solar energy initiative or this or that, and that's great, but maybe working towards the bigger goal, and maybe that bigger goal is already out there. Maybe it's Clarita, maybe it's the 100% Clean Act, but edited to get a little more bipartisan support. So maybe we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Maybe the legislation is already out there that we could help navigate or just help guide that to get it across the finish line.
And I mean, that's a great question, Nathan. I think the real issue at hand is that you have a lot of groups, including larger national groups, who are working on this, but haven't really found the answer and haven't really found that one piece of legislation that needs to move forward. I'd say that in current political times, it's really hard to move something forward like that. And certainly there might be more opportunity here in the future. But I think whenever that comes about, as far as the hunting and angling community goes, and conservation groups in general, I mean, if I had multiple of me, I would create a campaign that would convene every facet of the conservation community to have a plan on this is what we would want to see in legislation moving forward. And again, there's big national groups that already kind of do that, but I think the challenge is communicating across the conservation community as a whole on how to move that forward, because I don't know, I haven't worked on policy for that many years, but it's hard to know of anything out there that's such a concrete idea in and of itself, because of all the different facets you could go from sequestration to a carbon tax to I mean, there's just so many different tenets, I think. And but I am hopeful that will come about, because if you look at on the Republican side 10 years ago, climate change was non-existent as a priority. And now that is drastically changed, and you have some great resolutions coming out of the House, and a lot more, specifically on the House side, that are making climate change an actual priority, which I think is indicative of a lot of change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you to Alec. Thank you for this fantastic film. Thank you for the important work that you do. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to hand this over to Nikki. She's got one more request for you guys. And with that, goodbye and thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Michael, for all your thank you, Michael, for all your hard work on this. So my last request is that I'm working away on sharing to our senators that, there we go. Sharing to our senators that we want to take action on climate change, and that sportsmen are engaged in this subject. And so what we're looking for are letters or personal stories about climate change effects that you've seen. John and Val have both shared a little bit of their stories with me, or John on this call, and I'm encouraging the both of you, because I think you're the only two people that I haven't gotten these kind of letters from or action from, to kind of talk about what are some changes that we've seen, and really from that personal experience tone. I was thinking of earlier today that up at Mormon Lake, I learned to fish there, and last time I went there, there wasn't any water at all. And so I had to look that up today, and it's pretty normal for it to kind of come and go. But I'm wondering, well, how did I learn how to fish there? Maybe I was just a young enough kid that I was just casting and not, you know, not looking for a fish. But that's our largest lake, natural lake in Arizona, and it often disappears due to, you know, just not having water running into it. So it's an interesting state that we live in, I guess. So I would encourage any of you to write a letter. We're working on that for our staff and our board, and anyone that we know, if you have a personal story to tell, to write it out. We're looking for something that's less than a page. We can even do a little video or a phone call to record your thoughts and ideas. So if you'd like to do that with me, let me know. I'll put my info in the chat here.
Yeah, or if you know of other people, you know, I think Alec said that he had to think about, you know, a half a dozen people that were really passionate about this topic in Montana, and those became the storytellers for him. So if there's other people that you can think of that might be good storytellers, willing to tell kind of their experience, I think that would be great, because the more we can make it real for people, I think the more momentum we get behind it. When we start talking about all the myriad of legislative issues, I think people's eyes kind of glaze over. But when you keep it real, like Alec did on the film, and what we're trying to do is some stories through Arizona Wildlife Federation and Arizona TU, I think that's what really gets people's attention. So, yeah, so if you've got a story, fantastic, contact any of us or Nikki, or if you've got somebody else who might have a story, let us know, and we can even help you craft it.
Absolutely.
What's the best telephone number to find you?
Nikki, you want to give your contact info? You're on mute, Nikki.
I thought I could hit the space bar, but it's not letting me do it. Anyway, yes, John, I'll have my phone number in the chat box. Can you see the chat box?
No.
Okay, if you scroll to the bottom of your screen, you'll see either the word chat or you'll see the word more.
I see the chat.
Do you have a pencil in your hand, John?